here? Can people hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, Clayton, I think you get to start.
Yep, I can hear you. Okay, I'm going to start there. Everybody see my screen? Yeah, actually, Gerrit.
I see Jezebel.
That'll be my laptop. So this is about Gerrit. Just to kind of give you a brief introduction. Gerrit is both a code review tool and a Git repository server. So there's a lot of overlap between what we use GitHub Enterprise and for today and what we're going to be using Gerrit for. For the most part, Gerrit is how we will get changes into Git repositories going forward. There's a couple of repositories that we moved over already, and that's going to accelerate pretty soon. Gerrit is a tool that's also used by the OpenStack project, so if you've submitted changes to OpenStack, then you're probably already familiar with Gerrit because that's the way that you do it. And if you have experience with using Gerrit internally, then it'll be easier for you to submit changes upstream. Another thing that's also really common with Gerrit is integration with CI systems, usually in a lot of cases Jenkins. With the OpenStack project, they use that both for checks on changes that have been submitted and also when they get merged. We don't have this implemented very broadly right now. That's something that's in progress, and we're going to see more and more of as we move along. There's some basic documentation on the wiki. It's under the, this is going to load my window. So there's a Gerrit page under developer resources here. And this kind of goes through just kind of what Gerrit is, how to set up your account, how to submit changes. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to cover today, plus a little bit of extra stuff. This doesn't necessarily have everything, so if you run into something it doesn't have, then let us know or update it, and we'll get it updated. So most of this is really going to be kind of hands-on, just showing you how you work through submitting the change, what Gerrit looks like, how to use it. So for us, it's bfd-gerrit.os.cloud.cvc.net. If you go there and you haven't logged in, you're going to see this, and you're going to be like, where are all the things? Because you won't be able to see anything. So you'll have to sign in. This is your normal credentials that you use for pretty much everything in the Broomfield lab. I've got two browser windows open. One is this Clayton O account, which is one with just normal privileges, and that's what I'm going to try and do most of this as. So it'll look like what you're used to seeing, and then I'm going to have another window open over here that's with my normal credentials, so you can see what the approval process and everything looks like. So if you go ahead and sign in, you'll see all of the projects here. It's pretty straightforward. If you move over to the All tab, you can see there's a couple of categories here. This will show all open changes. All changes, so open changes are changes that have been proposed but not necessarily accepted. Merge changes are ones that have been accepted, they've been committed into the repository. So you can see here, this is one that Eric and I were just working on a little while ago to actually make an enhancement to Gerrit itself. And then abandoned changes are pretty much entirely Eric because he's been playing around with Git upstream. That's basically, hey, I can propose this, and I realized it wasn't a good idea. There is also, so if you want to see this menu structure, I find to be a little confusing. If you want to see a list of all the projects, you go to projects, and then this little menu item shows up here. If you want to play around with this, you want to go into propose changes and be sure that you're not going to screw anything up. There's this Gerrit sandbox project here. You can do whatever you want here. That's not important, but that's kind of what I'm going to show the layout of this. So by default, what you'll see here is this is how you can check out a copy of it. So you click here, go over to your terminal window, you space that in, and going to check it out over SSH. And again, this just uses your the SSH keys. So the SSH keys have to be set up in Gerrit. There's instructions on. I'm not going to cover that right now because there's instructions on the wiki on how to set that up. If you need help with it, feel free to reach out to me. I've already set this up for both my accounts. So I was actually going to do a dummy change for this, but Eric and I were talking, and there's a change that needs to be made to the change he just made. So I'm just going to actually walk through that. So we will go to projects and list. It is in the Puppet Cirrus Infra project. We actually just want to clone this locally. And so this is also going to assume that you already have the Git review client installed. There's some instructions on the wiki page on how to install that. If you're on your Mac, you can install it with pip. I'm not sure if it's available via Homebrew or not. If you're on a Ubuntu box, well, all of ours will already have Git review installed, but if you need to install it, you can just have Git install Git review. So we would just change it to here. And so the change that I need to make is going to be in manifest Gerrit PP. And the change itself is actually not really that important. It's a pretty trivial change that we need to make. Actually, it's trivial, but I don't remember what it is. I have to look. But the short version is that we basically just got the path for branches wrong. No, that's not working. Okay. So you can see here that it says for branches that the URL should be branches, but in fact it's tree. So that's the sum total of our change. See here that it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to go ahead and commit that, like you normally would. Okay, so you just check this out. The way that Git review works, you can just actually just run it as Git review, or you can run it as Git review with no dash. That's not actually what I meant to do. I have to show you the help. There's a lot of options here. You're basically only going to, most people are only ever going to use one of two or three of these. What I generally recommend you do is you want to run git review-s, which is this setup option. And so what this is going to do is, it creates a new Git remote called Gerrit that is going to, that should not be C O'Neill, it should be,
And that git review-s is going to read your .git review file that you've already stashed into this repository.
yes. Now if you look here, this basically specifies where you can find our Git server, or Gerrit server rather. Matt, were you saying something?
Yeah, so, if you compare this to OpenStack, when you started OpenStack, you generally just clone from, you don't clone from Gerrit, you clone from GitHub.
And either one will work just fine. Yeah, because they're just your repositories. Yeah.
Okay.
The only scenario in which you'd run into a problem there would be if like the replication is broken or behind or something like that. That would be really unusual.
Yeah, looks like the attendee list is covering half of your terminal. I don't want to turn it off.
I don't have the attendee list.
If you go full screen, it'll hide that. If you go full screen, guys, it'll hide that. That's why I went full screen on mine. And it's a client-side option. It's not on his end.
Yeah, there's no room of your attendee list. I can't see it. I don't have it up.
Yeah,
And once I went full screen, it hid it completely.
I noticed that the other day whenever Jason was doing his meeting. I don't know. I know I've ended up in situations where I couldn't view it.
I think what they're asking you to do is just to drag your terminal to the left, maybe
I can
2
certainly
inches.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so of you guys that have used Gerrit before, does anybody know how it picks which user to use here? That's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to remove the Gerrit remote just to do this.
You can just add the remote, so you can do like get remote add, and then you do like SSH username app whatever blah blah blah. So you can do it that way too.
I thought it just used. Oh, okay. So yeah, nobody will ever have to do this probably unless they're doing this demo. But I wanted to make sure it was as my Clayton O username, so that it would go as my normal user account, not the privileged one. So I was able to it actually just uses whatever the username variable is whenever you submit it. So what you can see here is that there's a Gerrit remote that it's going to use for pushing your changes. You can see here that you can see my commit. Now we're going to run into a problem here, and I'm just going to go ahead and submit the review, and you'll see, and it's going to tell us that we have a problem. Okay, so what it's saying is that there is no change ID in the commit message, and that's required. Once you've run the setup once, if you run the setup before you actually do the commit, it'll put a commit hook in for you that will do that automatically. And it actually will give you the command to go ahead and install the commit hook, which you can just run. So if you run into that error, that's because you ran the setup after you did the commit. And so what I need to do here is do a commit, dash amend, save it, and it will rewrite the commit to have this change ID here. And every review that's submitted in Gerrit automatically has a change ID. They're just supposed to be unique. And that's what Gerrit uses for internally identifying changes, but it's generated on client. So we're going to run git review again. And I'm going to type in this password too many times because somehow my keychain on my Mac is messed up. And it submitted the change. So this is change 568, you'll see here. And you can see that it's pushed it to this repository. So you can just click on this URL. And we can see all the stuff about our change. So the commit message is over here. So one thing about this, and I know the HP guys are going, new review screen. There are 2 review screens in newer versions of Gerrit. There are the new review screen, which it defaults to. The OpenStack project uses the old review screen. Some people really hate the new review screen. I figured I would give it a shot whenever we installed this, and I'm kind of sort of getting used to it. So if you're used to or prefer the old review screen, that's something you can change in your personal settings. But basically, what you have here is all of the relevant information. You have the your commit message, who submitted it, the branch, et cetera, et cetera. And then down here, you actually have information about the commits. You can go in here and you can view the commit message itself, and then you can see a side-by-side diff of what actually changed. And then you can go back to the change here. And then also you have down here just the history of what's happened with this commit. If you wanted to download that, you have options for checking it out, downloading patches, things along those lines over here. And if you have more than one patch set, you'll be able to switch between them here. So let's see, okay. So right here you can see my only options are basically to just reply, and I can vote. I can basically specify 0, -1, +1. So normal users can basically just vote on the review, right? You can specify +1 looks good to me, -1 probably needs some work. People that are project owners can do are -2. The +1, -1 is really just kind of informative as to people's opinions on it. It doesn't actually, they're not additive. It doesn't just, 2 + 1s don't make a +2. So generally you're going to always need to have somebody that's a project owner be able to specify a +2 for this to get merged. If you are a project owner, it's going to look something like this. So you can see here under reply, I have a couple more options, but other than that, it looks basically the same. So I'm going to go ahead and this is generally looks pretty good, but just to show you what it looks like whenever you have to change one, let me go ahead and show you that real quick. Let's say that, for example, I want to put a little bit more detail in the commit message, and I still have this checked out here. You do git commit -amend. You want to just change the existing commit that's already been submitted. And I'm just going to put this. Okay. And so you see, we still have the same change ID here. This is what Gerrit uses to tie these two different commits together. And so we view that. It looks pretty much the same. It's just, and we just run git review again. Okay, and the URL is still the same, but what we'll see over here whenever we reload it, as you can see, there's patch sets 1 of 2. And we can go to 2. And you can go in here and you can see that the actual commit that's changed is basically the actual file that's changed. There's no difference. One thing that's very useful whenever you have multiple change sets is you see here that you can switch between what is on each side. So if I go over here and I pick 1, this is picking from change set 1. Clearly the date's changed, but you can also see that in patch set 2, for patch set 1, I added this section right here. So that's really useful whenever you have a couple of different patch sets going. Somebody submits a new one and you need to look through it and figure out, well, what in the world did they even change? So that's something that you'll use a lot whenever you have more than one patch set. So one thing that you'll see, the way the Jenkins integration works on this is that there's actually a Jenkins user. Whenever a patch set gets uploaded, a notification goes off to Jenkins, and it will automatically check that out, run whatever tests need to be run. And then based on whether those tests succeed or fail, it will vote -1 or +1. And Jenkins has to vote one way or another on projects that have Jenkins integration. So that kind of keeps us from having to go in and spend a lot of time reviewing things that don't even pass automated tests.
If you want, there's a recent Horizon review that's got an example of that.
Okay. You ever is it pending or?
No, it should have been accepted within the last couple hours, maybe. Yeah, that second one.
This one? Right. So what you'll see down here is you see that Jenkins posted that it started the job that Eric has set up, and you can just click on that link and accept it. I'm not logged in. I'm in a private browsing session. Let's just log in. And so here you can see Eric's got it set up actually really nicely. So it shows like all these coverage metrics, and these are tests that automatically run. It's running a bunch of unit tests. I think he has like F8 testing in here for all of this stuff. And so you can actually go and look at the console output for the job too and see all of the things that it ran. And if it failed, this is how you're going to figure out that it failed. And so you can go down here. Jenkins says that it started. Eric said, hey, look, I don't care what Jenkins says. I'm going to say that it's good. And then Jenkins came back and agreed with him. And then it automatically got merged into the repository because both Jenkins and Eric said it was good. The Jenkins, one thing you'll notice here, actually, I don't think this project is set up correctly. You recreated this earlier today, right, Eric? You can go in and you can comment on any particular line in the file. So if Eric was looking at this and he's like, why in the world are we changing this from branches to tree? He can do that, save that, and vote -1 of like, I don't know why we would want to do this. And then I can come back and say, well, because it doesn't work, because, whatever reason. In addition to doing inline commenting, you can also just do via reply, and you can just do a general comment on the patch. And so I was confused because I'm like, where are my voting buttons? I don't have any voting buttons, and it's because I'm not on the most current patch set. I can't approve an older patch set. So that's pretty much what the workflow looks like if you're not an approver. If you're an approver, it's not any more complicated than that, really. The primary difference is you have this code review +2. You can also go here and reply and say, looks good to me, or whatever, and just vote +2. And it's going to, generally for any of these actions, it's going to send an email to the person that submitted the review. You can also add additional reviewers. By default, we don't have it set up to add reviewers yet, but if there's someone specifically you want to take a look at this, you can add their name here, and those get auto-completed out of LDAP. So I'm going to go ahead and +2 this. And one thing that I was not used to when I first started using this is that whenever you're used to OpenStack, I think that they just +2 and add a workflow tag. You have to actually click submit, or nothing actually happens. You're just voting +2. And so you'll see, change has been successfully merged into the Git repository. If we go over to GitHub here, we look at the commits, not there yet. There is replication automatically, but this is something that I want to kind of talk about also, is that, so for the projects that Gerrit is authoritative for, that's the only way to make changes to them. You can't, if that project still exists in JFDI, that's probably because there are still deployments in production that are pointed at that for the time being. The plan is to basically, the way we manage this migration is that first we move all of the data into Gerrit, remove permissions for most people to do commits into the old project in JFDI, and then there will be a new project in Gerrit Mirrors that will replace the one in JFDI. This is read-only. Unless we might change actually. And so yeah, you see here that it's been replicated over automatically now. So generally the browsing built into Gerrit is pretty horrible. The UI and Gerrit in general is not the best in the world. But it's not too bad. It's pretty functional once you actually get used to the way that it's laid out. But the learning curve's a little steep. So as far as projects that have repositories that have been moved over, Jason's TWC Manage is. Eric has set up OpenStack Horizon and OpenStack Django OpenStack Auth, which are he's working on getting it set up so that those will follow master from the upstream projects. The Puppet Cirrus Infra project, which is pretty much just used for things that are via DO1, is also in there. So if you want to add a module to Hubot, you can go in and figure out how to, it's like a one-line change in the Hubot config file and propose that as a review. And we can all talk about how annoying or not annoying that plugin would be. And also the Puppet Cobbler module, which used to be in the TWC OpenStack org on github.com. I moved in just recently. The plan probably for the next is in the next week or so to start getting all the rest of the public modules moved in. The workflow for the most part stays the same. You'll still tag modules. You'll still need to submit Puppet file changes. We'll have to work out exactly what the specifics of how that's going to work as we actually do the migration. And we're going to be adding more automated testing to at least do things like Puppet Lend, check, syntax checking on YAML files, really simple low-hanging fruit like that. That's mostly what I wanted to cover today. If anybody has any questions, we can do that. But for the most part, if you have questions after this, you can ask me, Matt. I know Eric has Gerrit experience. I assume Brad does. Adam does. Dave does. I'm sure I'm forgetting people on the team. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a Gerrit wiki page. Let's try and keep that up to date. If there's something that's missing, need to fix it, or let me know and I'll update it. The other thing is that there's a lot of really good workflow documentation on the OpenStack website on how they manage workflow. A lot of that is applicable. Some of the stuff that we're not doing yet, we will be doing. We won't do all of it because it just doesn't make sense for, because we're not running a gigantic, huge project like they are. I think that's pretty much everything I was thinking that we needed to go over today. Questions?
Did you record this session for Craig?
No, but I promised him that I will go through it with him personally, so I guess I'm on the hook for that.
All right, I've captured a lot of it in YouTube Hangout. I'll post that afterwards, and I'll make it private. You'll have to have the URL to get to it.
Oh, great. Okay, well, if